I have a special guest today, Bryan Casella, on all things business and technology. Bryan, thank you for joining me today.
David, my guy, what's up, man? We go way back, so this is different. This is different.
Yeah, this is one that I've been wanting to do for a while, especially since we were college dorm mates, and just watching your journey over the last 15, 16 years. It's been amazing. So as we get into it today, I know you are a lead of a national real estate company, but also you have different avenues that you are doing. Do you mind getting into some of your roles that you play today?
Yeah, bro. Of course. Thanks again for having me. I have the nationwide real estate team. I've been licensed as an agent now for 12 years. I have obviously my social media empire, right? 200,000 followers on YouTube. I think I have 50,000 on Instagram. So I've built, online uh, businesses, we can say, through that. I've done courses. I still have an active kind of coaching program where I have salespeople. I still have a couple hundred people active in that. I've also built up an investment portfolio in real estate. So I have 8 pieces of property that I own throughout the United States. I'm working with a developer now as well. I make ad revenue on YouTube, right? Do a little bit of affiliate marketing with some companies that do software and, lead generation and that kind of stuff on the sales side as well. I was for a while before the whole, COVID situation, doing a lot of traveling and speaking as well. I've spoken nationally, internationally. I've been to Australia, Canada, pretty much every state in the United States. And that used to be a pretty frequent thing for me. I used to probably travel and speak 2 or 3 times a month at the peak.
Wow, that's impressive. I don't think people understand how young you are and the amount of stuff that you do. As we go through some of those things that you're doing today, what are some of your biggest challenges in just business as a whole?
Yeah, biggest challenges, man. After a while, especially building, I think, any kind of business, really what you need to put everything on high octane is talent. You need people, right? So I would say the challenge for me is always, because I have that radar on 24/7. I'm always looking for new talent. I'm meeting new people. But I would say finding good quality people that buy into the vision, that they themselves are willing to work hard and contribute, is probably the biggest challenge overall. Because when I've been faced with other challenges, hasn't been a problem. There's speed bumps. But the one that's continuous that always keeps coming back is really finding talent. Because if I'm looking for like leadership on my real estate side, if I'm looking for somebody to help me with my online stuff, I need a specific person that fits specific criteria, right? And those people are not a dime a dozen. So even if you're out there and you're moving and shaking and you're meeting people, whether it's through referral or meeting people organically, finding people that are of that top tier type of mindset and level of ambition and dedication that happen to also align with your vision is a challenge for sure. So I would say that that's the top one right now.
The people is definitely, I think that we all know that not everyone has the drive to get things done the right way. And especially when you're a leader, there's certain things that you expect. What are some of the things that you didn't expect as you got out of college and into your career?
Things that I didn't expect. A couple for sure. One was the amount of, I would say, lack of support and backlash when I chose to go more of entrepreneurial, kind of start my own business type of route versus a traditional job. Because, most people that went to school, they got their degree, they became an engineer, lawyer, doctor, they followed that career path. I never really desired to follow that. And I think when I finally took that step to get my real estate license and really go full force, I was just shocked at, I was literally being insulted, man, by my family and stuff, just being called crazy and a nut job and what are you doing and get real. And, that shocked me because, yeah, to a degree I expected it, but to the extent that I got it, definitely shocked me for sure. Number two, I would say it really was challenging for me not having had that background of having maybe mentorship or help in entrepreneurship. I knew it was going to be tough getting into it, but it did slap me in the face, the reality of how much money and time and effort and skills it was going to require, to build up a business and build up your brand in the real world from the ground up. I'm talking like, by your own bootstraps, you're building something up. Because when I started, it was just door to door cold calls, like that nitty gritty hard work. So that definitely, although I knew it would be hard, it surprised me to the degree that it tested me. Because I think if I go back, David, my first year, I think I probably broke down in tears 3 times my first year, as a real estate agent and entrepreneur, because I would just feel the weight of the world, closing in on me. And although again, I knew it would be tough, it was tougher than I anticipated for sure. And the next one would be how quickly a lot of immediate friendships and relationships just kind of dissipated because we hit a crossroads. I was wanting better for myself and to go hard. And a lot of people in my life at that time were just okay with the status quo and continuing to do what they wanted to do. And very quickly that drove a wedge between me and a lot of those people because I was headed this way, they were headed that way. So that was a tough paradigm shift because suddenly I went from hanging out with people and having tons of friends to now, hey, I feel like I'm alone on this island on this journey where I want more for myself. But when I look around, I don't see many people on this journey with me. Right. And that led again to a lot of the stuff that I started doing online and the creation of a lot of friendships and communities that sparked after that. But I would say those are probably three things that I didn't expect. And I could go on and on, man.
Well, I mean, those are really big things that you touched on. Lack of mentorship, the fact that you didn't have that support that you really wish that you had up front, and some of the things that could have eased into it. And then also the backlash from your family. How did you overcome that backlash?
You're right, man. It was tough because you look at your close family and friends, and even if they're qualified to give you advice in these categories or not, you take what they say to heart. If a random stranger insults me, it's not a big deal. But if it comes from your mom or your dad and they say, "Oh, I'm so disappointed in you," you're like, "Oh man," like you feel that like in the depths of your soul. So it was tough because I think where I found refuge was through personal development and really getting into just learning more about human beings, our thought process, why we're wired the way that we're wired. And the more I educated myself around the human being, communication, it really opened up a lot in my mind in regards to understanding of why those things were happening. So I started to figure out, hey, they're not coming from a place of being malicious or not wanting to support me. A lot of it is just coming from fear or scarcity because they themselves haven't done it or they don't know anybody that's done it. And the people that they know that tried that stuff failed. So they're thinking, hey, our son is going to put himself in a compromised position and deal with a lot of stress and risk and things that we don't want him to deal with. So we're going to tell him not to do it. So it's not that they don't believe in you necessarily. They're trying to protect you, right? Which any parent would do. So as you start learning these things, although you still feel the emotional brunt of it, you start to really mature and understand and become more wise as to why the world is the way that it is and why certain things operate the way they operate. And that I would say was really where I was able to overcome a lot of it. Was I stuck with my dream and said, okay, whether people support it or not, it's my choice, it's my life, I'm going to do what I want to do. But really the self education aspect of it, I think, was really what put the cherry on top and allowed me to kind of step through it. Because initially, man, emotionally it was just destroying me. It was very difficult to overcome. And looking back now, I understand why a lot of people quit or pull out, because they can't deal with the emotions. It's very heavy when the people closest to you don't support you and actively speak out against you doing something. It's tough.
Yeah, that's a tough pill to swallow when those that are the closest to you, know your heart, know your personality, know where you came from, and still have that same bearing. I know a little bit about your upbringing and so forth. Do you mind sharing where your family came from, and then going into becoming a professional basketball player, and then into the actual business side of things?
Sure, yeah. So my family, I'm first generation born in the States. My family immigrated from South America. Both of my parents were born and raised in Argentina. Spanish is their first language. They legally immigrated their families here to the States. I was the firstborn here. My other two older brothers were born over there. All of our family is still there. The only people from my bloodline that are in the United States were myself, my two older brothers, which one of them is still here now and another one went back, and then my two parents. Everyone else is still there. Like I'm talking outside of us, nobody speaks a lick of English, right? So growing up, it was very much that culture, speaking Spanish. I got sent to school. I didn't even know English yet. So when I got sent to preschool and kindergarten, they thought I was a mute because I couldn't speak English and communicate, right? I remember my parents telling me, literally one of the teachers is like, hey, is your kid like mentally retarded? Like he doesn't speak, doesn't talk. They're like, oh, we only raised him speaking Spanish, so he's going to have to learn English in school, right? But with that also came instilling of certain beliefs and philosophies that looking back now weren't conducive to me pushing these boundaries and being an entrepreneur. It was very much so be meager, right, with what you do. Don't push for more. Don't be too ambitious. Don't be too loud. You know, it's very much keep you in a box. You know, keep your head down. Just get a job and kind of eke your way throughout life. And that's the way it is. That was kind of what was taught to me. And the previous generations kind of went with that as well. Because when I look now, a lot of my family over there, again, it's a third world country. Let's call it like it is. They have basic like factory jobs. They work for the day. They don't have savings, right? Everyone's just working to survive. So that was kind of bred into us. Same thing with my parents. So looking back now, I see why it was so difficult for me, especially mentally and with my family to kind of break out of that. We obviously I did well in high school. We ended up meeting up in college. I ended up transferring out. I never really did that well in college per se, but I knew I was like, hey, I got the grit, I got the talent. So once I was done, I ended up just trying out with different teams, and that's how I ended up getting signed to go play. I just literally went to tryouts, and that's how I eventually got a contract. And I ended up playing in Spain a little bit. I played in South America, and then after my second injury and ankle surgery, at around 24, I just hung it up. And that's when I went back to South America for a year and kind of hung out with my family, worked with one of my uncles. Then I came back to the States at 25 officially and said, I gotta figure something out. We're closing the chapter in basketball. And now I gotta step into the real world and figure it out. But that seed was planted before that I would be an entrepreneur. I knew I didn't want a regular job. I did have the temptation because my parents were pushing me. So you'll laugh at this, bro. I remember I went to an interview, the car rental company Enterprise, right? I went to an interview, right? And I'm sitting there. This is probably 2011, 12. I can't remember exactly when. She's telling me about the position, and she's like, you're going to work like 6 days a week, like 10, 11 hours a day. And remember, I'm in Los Angeles at the time, bro. And she said, you're going to work six days a week, right? 10, 11 hours a day. And I'm going to make like 28 grand. And I'm sitting there like, okay, I knew I didn't want to get a job, but this like, how could I said, if I go to this next interview and take this job, I will be miserable the rest of my life because I'll know I stepped into something out of obligation instead of going after what I wanted. So long story short, they call me back for the second interview. I don't go. My parents are like super upset because I told them, but I said, no, that was like a test. Right. And then from there is when I did everything to get my real estate license, and I went full force, man. And, I hit the real estate game hard because that's what I landed on and said, this is what I want to do. This is going to be my breakthrough or opportunity in entrepreneurship to make something happen. And as hard as it gets, I'll roll with the punches. Right. And that ended up being 2012, 2013 when I officially got licensed, and everything started from there.
Now, as this trajectory of growth, and we pull it back to like mentorships and stuff, did you have any? Obviously, at the beginning, you didn't have those mentorships. Now, have you been able to acquire some? And what's your thoughts on mentorship?
Yeah. So right out of the gate, even right before I got officially licensed, the real estate company that I was working with, I had asked them, hey, like, I need a coach, I need a trainer. I know obviously you guys aren't obligated as my broker to do it, but who do you guys work with? And they referred to me one of like the most original OG real estate coaches, which is Mike Ferry. That's his name. And I signed up for the coaching, and I don't recommend that people do this necessarily, but I literally put it on a credit card. At the time, back then, it was $1,000 a month, but I said, hey, I gotta do it. I gotta pay the price. So I said, hey, I have enough here. I signed the contract for a year. I have enough credit right now to pay for a couple months, like 2 or 3 months. I got to figure it out. I got to put my feet to the fire. And I made it happen, dude. I signed up. I went to an event. I did my weekly coaching calls with a coach because I knew, hey, if I really want to do well in this sales game and real estate game, like you mentioned, I need a mentor. I need a coach. I'm not gonna. I can't afford to try to figure this out on my own. And looking back, dude, risky, scary, but one of the best decisions I ever made, because then that opened the door to other coaches and other help and other business consultants and this and that. So just as much as I coach and mentor a ton of people, I myself have been doing that now for well over a decade. And I think it's absolutely essential because any consummate professional that we look at in any field is trained by multiple people in multiple categories. Like obviously being a basketball fan, look at Kobe. He had like 100 coaches, right? He had a physical fitness coach, he had a shooting coach, he had like a voice coach, like he had all this different stuff. But again, if you want to be elite at what you do, which I think nowadays more so is even super super required, if you want to be the top dog, you got to get it. So 100% you got to do that. I would recommend it and I champion that, and that's one of the first things I tell people if they're going to do anything business related. Get a qualified coach or trainer to help you immediately.
How would you suggest the next generation to get a mentorship? What would be the approach if I'm starting out in any business and know that there's someone that I want to talk to? Who How would you approach that?
Yeah, there's a couple ways, right? I guess like let's say I go back to like when I started, when I started 12 or 13 years ago, the world that we live in now, that didn't exist, right? You couldn't just go on YouTube or Instagram or TikTok and like find people, right? And even then, I wouldn't recommend that for most people out of the gate. So like what I did when I was going to, real estate offices was I was asking, the brokers and the people there, right? I would look on the board and it said, hey, Ernie's number one agent. Let me go talk to him. I went to the top guy. I said, hey, you know, who helped you? How did you get to number one? You know what I mean? And I think a lot of times getting your foot into the door for a lot of people means you're going to have to go out there and meet these people, go to the events. There's so many things you can sign up for now. You might have to pay, $50, $100 to go to an event, or you can look up locally on eventbrite.com or a website like that. You can find networking events and meetup groups for, investors and entrepreneurs. Like I would say, get your feet into the room, break some bread with people, meet some people, shake some hands, talk to them, because I think our default nowadays, and I think this is a mistake, is to always just do stuff online. When looking back, I landed on real estate and found a coach and all that because I was out there experimenting and locking horns with life, trying different things. Hey, a buddy of mine owns a clothing company. Let me work with you for a couple of days to see if I like this. Right? I was out there trying stuff and meeting people, and that's how I ended up connecting with a lot of people who referred me to somebody or connected me with the right person, who then led to me finding some sort of help or coach or mentor. And I think if people get out there, that's one of the best things they can do, because through referral and word of mouth, you're going to be able to do a lot.
That's some very important thought process right there. Is just get out there. Just there's going to be a cost to everything in life, but when it comes back to you, you'll realize that it was worth it in the end.
And we're
Um,
stuck in the digital era, unfortunately, man. Like I think our generation is probably the last one that probably grew up without phones in their hands or devices. So to a degree, I would say we're more social and socialized, we can say, in the real world than a lot of these younger generations. And I think the default now is to do everything on an app or behind the screen instead of getting out there and meeting people. Like dude, that developer, great story that relates to this. That developer that I'm working with here in South Florida, I originally met one of his partners who came to one of my free networking events at my office. And I only had 30 people at that event, but he met me and was so impressed with my presentation. He's like, dude, I got to introduce you to my partner. He's a big developer here. He's been working in South Florida for 30 years. I said, sure. Yeah. We hit it off. We were cool. He introduced me to the developer. I interviewed with them. Boom. Now I'm doing projects with them. And that opened up a whole new relationship. But that happened with this. In this case, I created the event for people to come to, but that's how these opportunities pop up. And the more you're engaged in that, the more you're going to expose yourself to. And I think a lot of times it's just get out of the house. That's the number one phrase I tell people: get out of the house. Get out of the house. Like I love doing all this online stuff in the studio and the lights, but even I'm like, I just want to go outside, because I just love it. And I think the more people get with that and make that a normal thing, it'll be easier for them to grow and develop, meet people, prospect, get leads, and do a lot of the stuff, the traditional business stuff that I think will help them a lot.
Now, you mentioned the get out of the house and just go. And you also mentioned a lot about the technology aspect of today's world. What are the future generation have that we didn't have? And what are some of the things that are missing in this future generation that could
Mhm.
revert back to what
Yeah.
works?
Man, the new generation, like a question I'll get in my industry is, well, Bryan, compared to when you started 12 years ago, compared to now, like, do you think real estate is easier, harder, the same? I'll say, well, I think it's easier now. As tough as some people can look at the market conditions, right? Because I think this last year was the lowest amount of home sales since like 1995, I think, the statistic when I last looked at it. But that's for a few reasons. And part of it is self-imposed from us in the industry. But if I'm going to answer that question directly, what do they have? They have so many free resources. Like this thing, dude, is so powerful. Like, bro, when we were growing up, we had like the big cameras, right? The VHS, like different ball game, dude. Like you would go out. Now, if people go out without their phone, they have anxiety. We'd go out and our parents, we didn't have cell phones, nothing, right? And then if we ended up staying late, we'd call from a friend's house, the landline, you know what I mean? It was a different world. Same thing with the payphones on the highway, right? If you broke down, you had to get on the payphone and call somebody. Um, it's just different. So I think right now, your ability to grow a brand, connect with people, and build something from nothing is accelerated and facilitated with phones because you have YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and all of those platforms are absolutely free. All my platforms and everything that I grew that exploded was done organically without ever putting a penny behind ads, right? And that came later on in my career compared to right in the beginning as if I started today. So the technology aspect, the AI being introduced is just out of this world, and integrating that into our sales flow, into our businesses, into our CRMs is incredible. That's something brand new that the new generations will definitely be able to utilize. What I think is missing with them is what I've noticed just in general with the younger cats and the younger generation is there's almost like this opposition, we can say would be the right word, to traditional business principles. They
Mm.
think, oh, that's old school. That's what, my grandpa does. Oh, no, that doesn't work. Like if I tell somebody to make a phone call or go door to door, they look at me like I'm speaking a different language to them. And I'm like, dude, as much as technology advances, people, especially in the sales industry, this is a people business. You got to have the conversation. We got to connect with people. People would much rather do business with us than a machine, for sure. Unless we're so insufferable, they'd rather work with a machine, right? But then that's a you problem, not technology problem, right? And I think a lot of that, understand like empathy, right? Basic communication skills in the newer generations is severely lacking. Like when I look at a lot of the younger students that come into my team or my, coaching sphere, if they're between 17, 18 and 25, 30, that's the number one glaring issue that they have, David. It's they just flat out are not very good communicators. And I'm telling them, like, hey guys, you're selling something. You're going to help them move. If you can't communicate, who's going to trust you enough to hire you? And I think that goes for almost any industry, right? You have to be a brand and a person that people can trust. And if you can't express yourself, like I'm sure you know a ton of people who are so intelligent, but they can't communicate for a lick. It's like, dude, if you
Yeah.
have, $1 billion idea, but you can't, like the show that always drives me nuts, Shark Tank. I'll see guys go on there with these amazing ideas. I'm like, dude, you can't even string a sentence together. Like, did you not think that it would be important that you have to articulate your idea? So that I think, and that's just generally speaking, but especially the younger generations, I would say that's the biggest kind of issue or weakness, weak link in their chain that they have to address, because more so our society is pushing more towards convenience, apps, and like look at the store. You go to the store, you have the self checkout. I see people stand in line for 10 minutes in the self checkout instead of going to check out with a regular cashier. And I'm like, so you're waiting longer so you don't have to talk to somebody? That's just weird. But I don't want to rant too much. You get the point.
No, I definitely get it. As we switch gears a little bit, what are some of your biggest failures as a business owner?
Some of my biggest failures as a business owner. Man, I would say initially, especially my first year and a half, man, I was so financially irresponsible. I had never seen money like that. I had never seen commission checks like that. I remember, I think it was my fourth or fifth month. I closed the deal. It was like a $31,000 commission check. And then within like a week or two after that, I closed two more deals. And there you go. In 1 month, I made like 60, 70 grand. And over here, I'm thinking I'm the king of the world. Like, oh, I can sit at the table with, Money Mayweather. Like, I'm rich, like, so that led to a lot of exposing of a lot of those weaknesses that I had in regards to financial responsibility and just financial aptitude. I remember shortly thereafter, I was having money problems and I sat back and I said, man, I just made this much money. Where did it go? That's what led me to take a step back, really assess the situation, educate myself more on finances, become a lot more disciplined, implement a money management system. And, it definitely turned a new chapter for me financially and taught me a lot. So I'm glad I went through those mistakes. Right. But that's definitely a major failure. Financial, we can say responsibility for sure. 100%. As a leader, well, when we kind of discussed off camera, a lot of the issues that I was having in regards to, being deplatformed and censored during the whole COVID era, I guess one of the oversights that I had was as a leader, because at the time I was nationwide, I didn't realize how that would have a trickle down effect on my organization because we had to end up moving my nationwide team from one company to another. And when we moved, that new company, it hadn't opened yet in some of the states where I had key members of my team. Right. So temporarily we had to either let them go or kind of create like this web to make it happen. And I never thought, hey, it's going to get this bad to the point where now if I have to move companies, I'm going to leave a few of my members out to dry. And some of them were leadership in my company. And they obviously felt hurt that we were moving companies and they're like, hey, I can't join, you know? So as a leader, I would say uh, failing to really see the consequences and ramifications of my own actions and how that would trickle down to even the most, you know, baseline employee in my organization. So I would definitely count that as a failure for sure, or a big issue for me. And other than that, I would say those are the two big ones, because I have my challenges and stuff. But in regards to failure, because it's a strong word, I would say those were probably the two biggest failures in the last 5 to 10 years in my career for sure.
What about if we go to your personal life? What was one of your biggest failures?
I would say before really changing myself and developing my character 10 years ago, one of the biggest failures was waiting so long to really develop a good relationship with my parents. I felt like that was neglected and I felt a little bit too like I would sweep that under the rug, you know, and I would look at my parents and deal with them in the wrong way and with the wrong mindset. And when that shifted, in my late 20s and early 30s, I said, man, I should have done this a long time ago. So I would definitely consider that a failure. So neglecting of my family and not fostering and building or repairing those relationships, right? Because everybody deals with what they deal with their family. People have had issues, wrongdoings, right? Some people have dealt with abuse or neglect and that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, it's my family, right? So I definitely feel like I failed in that category for sure, 100%. Um, Something else in my personal life that's a big one.
Yeah, I think that if we stay with that, that is one thing that we all, as entrepreneur and thriving for the best, we do let a lot of those things that we do need to harvest and nurture go to the wayside, like your
Hmm.
families and so forth. So that's a good one. But as we get ready to wrap up today, one of the questions that I love to ask is, what's a question that you wished I asked during today's podcast? And then if you could go ahead and explain your answer to it.
Hmm. What question do I wish you would have asked? Maybe something along the lines of what led me to believe that everything I've accomplished, I would actually be able to do it. Right? Like, what did I have a loose screw in my mind? Right? Did it come when I was a child? Did I have a big vision? Or what was it that led me to believe that I would be that one person who could break all these barriers and accomplish all these things? Like looking back. And I guess my answer to that would be no matter what I did in my life, whether it was like chasing the basketball dream or doing this stuff in business and online, I always was able to create a vision, a thought, an idea in my mind, and then hold it there. And regardless of opposition or what was going on around me, I would hold that vision and said, okay, if this is what I want to do, okay, I'm gonna stick with it, and I'm gonna do what it takes, go through what I gotta go through to get that. And as a kid, it was the athletic dream. And then once that transitioned to the next chapter, it was what I was doing in real estate. And I always held it. Like I look back at my journals, I still have stacks of old journals. And a lot of the stuff that I'm doing now, the money that I'm making, my team being nationwide, working with a real estate developer, if you go back and you read my journals from, 2014, 15, 16, I'm writing that every day. I work with a real estate developer, right? My real estate team is nationwide, and you literally see it in ink, and it'll be like January 5th, 2014. Then you see it again in March of 2014. Then you see it again like the next year and the next year. So I was crazy enough to grab something and say, hey, I might not have this now, and this may be in the distant future, but one day I'm going to have this. And I'm writing it, I have pictures of it, and I'm stubborn, right? It's like that childlike stubbornness, It's like I'm going to do it. Just like when you tell a kid, "Hey, what do you want to be when you grow up?" and they're like 8 years old, they're like, "Oh, I'm going to be an astronaut." Those kids are stubborn. If you try to talk them out of it, they'll start making fun of you and be like, "Wait, I don't like you. Like leave me alone. I want to be an astronaut." And I think that was one thing that has stayed with me even into adulthood is I'm stubborn like a kid. If I want something, I'll go after it. And I think that nowadays is very tough to find because when I talk with people, when I meet new people, I find that the average person gives up on things far too quickly.
Yeah, I think that's really important, and that's a great way for us to let the next generation know to still be kid-like in the sense of those aspirations, those dreams, but also stay focused on those goals, the journaling, the check-ins with yourself, making sure that you have that mental stability to continue to push through some of the barriers because we all go through challenges, no matter what it is, whether it's physical, whether it's mental, whether it's your lifestyle, whatever. But if you actually hone in on those things and you start making a path in your mind that that's what you want to do, anything's accomplishable.
For sure. 100%. You just got to be crazy enough to believe it.
Exactly. And before we get out of here, what are some of the top three books that you would recommend, whether it's in business or in life studies?
Man, narrowing it down to three. That's a tough one. Okay. We'll go with a few that come off the top of my head. I would say The Art of Seduction by Robert Greene. Fantastic book. I love that book because that really opened the gateway in my mind to start studying like human and behavioral psychology and that kind of stuff. So The Art of Seduction by Robert Greene. Fantastic book. All his books, by the way, are great. Another one would be like baseball anything. Pitch Anything by Oren Clef. That's a sales book, more around like advanced sales and storytelling. He used to work with a hedge fund, I believe, and he raised billions of dollars for them. So he talks about how he put deals together. Fantastic book. I think that would be good for like youngsters, entrepreneurs, salespeople. And the last one, I got so many titles going through my head.
Like Kobe Bryant.
I know, right? The Black Mamba. That's a good book. Uh, I would go. You know what? I'll keep it general. I'll go with Anthony Robbins' book. Right. I think it's called. He has one called Unleash the Power Within, and then I think the other one is called Personal Power. I think it's an old school book, dude. Like it has gold writing on the front, and it's a black hardcover. I think it's called Personal Power by Anthony Robbins. Great book. All his books are fantastic too. Tony Robbins, right? However, people might know him, the famous guy, but it's one of his old school books, I think from like the 80s or early 90s. He did Unleash the Power Within and he did Personal Power. Personal Power is one I'd recommend. Very, very good book because what I like about his books in particular is as he's telling a story, he's giving you things that he's learned and techniques that he applies. So he'll write, a chapter, and within that chapter there'll be one or two segments. So it says here, reference this for the exercise, and you can literally flip to the next page and it'll tell you the exercise to do. So as I was reading his types of books, I would stop reading and do the exercises. And I think a lot of people don't do that stuff. And it's so important that you apply what you read. Because I've met so many people that have read all these books. I'm like, dude, how are you not crushing it if you're reading these books, but they're not applying it? They're just reading it for entertainment, you know? But those three would be good, man. But you know, if you want more recommendations later, I can email you a ton.
Definitely, those are really good books. I've read two of them, so I definitely highly recommend them also. But as we wrap up today, I want to thank you for joining me on All Things Business and Technology, Bryant.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. Hopefully we can do another one.
Cheers.
Thank you for tuning in today. I hope you found this helpful, and I hope you'll tune in next time. For more information on how we can help your business, check out our website at sigmaways.com. I'd love to hear your feedback. Please send me a message with any topic or questions you want me to cover. Also, if you're in the world of business and technology, I would love to have you as a guest. Please hit the like and subscribe button below and stay up to date on the next video. Once again, I'm David, and this is All Things Business and Technology. Cheers.